welcome to ET Now Startup Central, India's first and only daily show dedicated to startups, technology and entrepreneurship. I'm Chandra Shrikant coming to you live from India's startup capital, Bengaluru, and we kick off the show today with a milestone that one of India's unicorn has reached. We're talking about Zomato, that has evolved from a restaurant review website to a food delivery platform to what its founder Dipinder Goyal describes as a farm-to-mouth platform. Now it's clocked its 10-year milestone today, and we decided to catch up with its first investor, Sanjiv Bikhchandani of InfoEdge, who wrote the first check for Zomato nearly 8 years back in 2010. Sanjiv Bikhchandani joins us all the way from Noida on Startup Central. Sanjiv, great having you on the show. Thanks so much for joining us. As Zomato's first investor, someone who really wrote the company its first check, what do you make of this 10-year milestone? What does it mean from a startup perspective?
So I think the company's come a long way. We are patient long-term investors, and we've been in for 8 years and we continue to invest. And in fact, we believe the game is still just beginning actually. And therefore this so we are quite happy to stay for 10 years, more than that, 15 years, whatever it takes to take the company to its logical destiny. I think the company has come a long way. It's diversified in many ways. Its markets, its product offerings, it's grown in size in terms of number of employees, turnover, number of customers, transactions, everything. So this is a major milestone. For a startup to be 10 years old, I think it has evolved a lot.
Sanjiv, there's an interesting backstory to how they came about that funding. Apparently, you just sent a mail to them saying, "Hi, this is Sanjiv. I use your website. If you need money, then call me." And this was when Zomato was actually called foodiebay.com. So tell us how that came about, because apparently within 3 hours of sending that mail, you met the team and gave them a check in 48 hours.
Well, it was called FoodieBay then, and both Hitesh and I had been separately using the site, for about 6-8 months before that, and we liked the site. And when we discussed, we figured that maybe it's worthwhile having a conversation with FoodieBay for investment. So I went to Network Solutions and did a Whois search and found out Dipinder Goyal's name in the admin contact. Then I did a Google search on his name and I found an email ID, and then I sent a cold email to him. And I still have that email somewhere in my email archive where, I've said, look, I use your site, we are fans, and if you're looking to raise money, contact us. And he got back to me by email in 24 hours, and we met in 48 hours, and we shook hands in 72 hours. So that bit is substantially correct. I think we liked the site immediately, we liked the founders immediately, and we figured we should be working together.
Right, but what kind of due diligence went into this, considering you gave them a check within days? Was there something about the founding team that convinced you, Dipinder Goyal and Pankaj Chadha?
So first thing is that the site had natural traction. I mean, that is evidence that they're solving an unsolved problem, that customers are coming without having to advertise, and they're coming back again. So I think that gave us confidence. We'd used the site ourselves and found it useful. We believed there'd be an application for it. We didn't know what the market size would be, but we figured that they'd do something. And then when we met Dipinder and Pankaj, we liked them. They were young, they were very straightforward. They had a very good idea on product. They were ambitious. They wanted to make it happen. They were committed, and they ticked many of those boxes. And instinctively, there was a chemistry that worked.
Right. Right. Sanjiv, if I look at the last few years, perhaps, 2016 was a very tough year for Zomato. There was a massive markdown that came in from HSBC. People started questioning its unicorn status, its hurried expansion overseas, its acquisitions, and, even the UK foray, a lot of people thought were premature. What role did you really play as an investor at that stage, to really help them tide through all these challenges and bounce back from then to now?
So I think we've when we invest in companies, and and that's true in the case of Zomato as well, we are in constant dialogue and conversation with the entrepreneurs. So whether it's exchanging WhatsApps or just over the phone or meeting, we just discuss business, discuss operations, discuss risk, returns. expansion plans, slowdowns, and everything. So it's a very open dialogue, and there was a bit of a hiccup in capital markets in the year 2015, and at that point of time, Zomato sort of figured that its growth strategy would have to change a bit for a while, and they got into a more conservative mode in terms of capital expenditure, or in terms of burn, and they moved towards break even. But gradually, as the company sort of got to break even and was on more solid foundations, I think investor interest came back, and they were able to raise money to expand and have a very ambitious growth plan right now. So our job really is to be a sounding board whenever the entrepreneurs want, is really to have conversations and just figure out the best way ahead.
Right. Right. Sanjiv, hindsight's always 20/20, but considering you've been an investor for the last 8 years, what would you say is the one thing or a few things that Zomato got right, and what is a decision that perhaps they got wrong?
So I think they've always made good decisions on product, on app, the expansion into delivery. I think those decisions are very good. I would, of course, relook at some of the acquisitions they did overseas, but frankly, if you don't try it, you don't learn. And I think all in all, it's been a very good journey.
Info Edge has been an investor in Zomato for about 8 years now. You hold a dominant stake, I think over 40%. 6 to 8 years is typically the time horizon for a PE or a VC fund. But is it going to be a long-term story for Info Edge? Do you see yourself staying invested for perhaps the next decade or so? Is this going to be a major growth engine for you?
Well, in Policy Bazaar, we went in 2008, and we've gone in again in 2018, and we've been investing right through. So, like I said, we are long-term patient capital, and we are in no hurry to exit, and we back our companies for a long term. What it means for us, is that, look, we've got additional growth engines, we've got additional value creation opportunities. Naturally, these are independent companies, and we are minority shareholders, and the entrepreneurs run them, and they're independent. But we are very happy and privileged to be able to invest behind good entrepreneurs that they let us in. And we try and help them as much as possible wherever they need help. But really the growth engines of Info Edge are also going to be Naukri, 99 Acres, Jeevan Sathi, Shiksha, which are our internal businesses. So it's both a combination of internal businesses and external investments.
Right, but Sanjiv, if you look at the food space overall, this was an untouchable space a couple of years back. But in the last year, you've had Ola Food Panda, you've had Uber Eats, you've had Swiggy that's turned unicorn recently. Would you say it's become a very attractive space again? There's talk about Zomato going in for a fresh funding for a valuation of $2 billion. So is the space more mature compared to what it was a few years back with, a few clear winners?
I think the winners have been picked, and these are, I think, Zomato and maybe to some extent Swiggy, and which is why investment is going into these companies. Naturally, the market is growing fast, and both these companies are driving the market growth, and I think that's good. I think clearly food habits are changing. Online ordering is now mainstream. If you look at restaurant businesses, a significant percentage of the revenue now comes from delivery and online ordering. There are whole businesses that are starting out as dark kitchens only. That means it's just a kitchen, and they're just shipping dishes, and they're not serving customers on premise. So really, there's a transformation happening, and I think Zomato is driving it, and we're happy about that.
Finally, Sanjiv, before we let you go, if there are 3 or 4 takeaways for entrepreneurs watching this show or aspiring entrepreneurs watching this show that they can take away from the Zomato story, what would they be?
I think the first thing is solve an unsolved problem, and I think Zomato did that, and which is why it has been so popular all along. The second is dream big, and the Zomato team always dreamt big, but start small, and they started small. The third is be ambitious and execute well.
Wow, thanks so much for talking to us, Sanjiv. Very, very insightful conversation. That's Sanjiv Bikhchandani, the man who wrote the first check for Zomato that's now a unicorn, that's turned 10 years old. That's quite a significant milestone for a startup. And there is talk that the next round is going to value them at $2 billion. And guess what? Sanjiv Bikhchandani decided to invest in them. He just dropped in a mail. And like he said, everything got concluded in 72 hours. That's a fascinating backstory there as far as the food tech space is concerned, lessons and insights for other entrepreneurs. But on to our next story. Now, if the trouble for Bitcoins wasn't enough on the regulatory front, right from the RBI to the Finance Ministry, there's new trouble brewing on religious lines because the All India Muslim Law Board has said that Bitcoins are not Islamic and should not be used. This is according to a report in the print that has a copy of this directive from the Muslim Law Board. My colleague Rahul Daima joins in live with more details. Rahul.
Chandra, that's right. You know, it's probably for the first time that the All India Muslim Personal Law Board has given a directive that does not really ban personal laws, because they generally, cater to be it marriage or inheritance. But clear terms, they have listed out objections to why Bitcoin should be avoided really. Remember, even in other countries, Islamic countries, the likes of Egypt has also issued directive that under Islamic law, Bitcoins are not really conducive because it does not really carry an intrinsic value and can really lead up to them really landing in trouble. So to really pin out the objections that they have stated, they say that it provides anonymity to criminals. Also, since the government does not really have a control on it, there's no redressal mechanism or courts that they can approach. Also, it can really be used in money laundering, terrorism activities. And the fact that, there is no protection against theft or hacking. So clearly there, the Muslim Law Board really, this is an advisory in the sense, asking all Muslims in India to shun using Bitcoins. As you rightly pointed out, the RBI also in its monetary policy review in April this year had clearly asked individuals and businesses to stay away from Bitcoins. And now we have, and the All India Personal Muslim Law Board also that has stepped in. Remember, this is only an advisory, but really talks about how they have also beefed up, seeing the Islamic law in several countries, also saying Bitcoins are not safe to trade in.
Right. Thanks for that update, Rahul. In fact, we are going to track this space closely. It remains to be seen what kind of a bearing this is going to have. Clearly, multiple challenges as far as cryptocurrencies in India are concerned. But on that note, I'm afraid it's time for a break on this leg of Startup Central. But come back because we tell you about yet another VC fund that's managed to raise money. We're talking about Inventus Capital. We managed to catch up with one of its partners to find out what kind of startups they will be investing in. Come, take a break and come back for ET Now, Startup Central. Welcome back to ET Now Startup Central. Now, it's not just raining investments for startups, but for venture capital firms themselves. A lot of them are in the process of raising a fresh round for their new funds. We covered Lightspeed Venture Partners yesterday with their new fund for India. And today we spoke to Inventus on their new fund. They've achieved the first close of a fresh fund. My colleague Rahul Daima caught up with two of its partners, Rutvik Doshi as well as Parag Dhol, to really find out the areas that Inventus will be investing in and whether shifting the domicile to India has helped them in a big way as far as tapping domestic capital from the likes of SIDBI is concerned. Listen in to this interview.
This has been a very, very good journey. As you probably know, the previous two funds of ours were completely offshore funds. This time around, we decided to flip it around and do a completely India-based fund, which is domiciled in Indian currency. What this has allowed us is to do two things. One is tap into the large pool of domestic investors which are there. which includes, again, there are two categories of them. One is, of course, the government's sovereign fund, which is managed by SIDBI, which is the 10,000 crore fund which was announced. So we were able to access that. Second is, there's a large pool of investors in India who want to invest in this asset class. Prior to this, they didn't have access to this asset class because we were all offshore funds. Now this has allowed them to participate in them, and it's a very, very mutually benefiting relationship, because one is they get access to investment, plus secondly, us and our entrepreneurs get access to this set of people who are very well placed within the industry in India and can actually help the portfolio companies, help the fund, etc., go to the next level.
Correct. Parag, coming to you, it is an India-focused fund for the first time that, you are sort of having this. So was the idea that there's a lot more opportunity here, for Indian startups to really look at, or was it also driven by the fact that you have these tech entrepreneurs also being interested? Because, we have Redbus, founder, you have Mindtree's founders, you have Big Basket founders, a whole lot of them who've sort of come and backed it.
So if you look at evolution, let's say China's evolution, for example, it starts with US money typically. That's where India also started. But you have to understand the dynamics of the two markets are different. The US market, Indian market, 18 trillion, 2 trillion, etc., etc. Eventually, I think the domestic market capital picks up, and that's what is happening in India now. Last 3-4 years, people like IDG and Bloom and others have done it, and it is our turn to do it now. And that's where the puck is going. Indian capital will become more important as we go along. And obviously, given that we intend to invest in India, these deep relationships that we have now with the tech entrepreneurs and the larger ecosystem helps our companies as well.
You mentioned about the 10,000 fund of funds, but initially the criticism was that a lot of it wasn't really coming by. A lot of entrepreneurs saying they had no clue where the money was going. Even, PM Modi admitted that a section of the money, less than 1,000 crore rupees, what sort of, are things changing, from that front also?
When the fund was announced, most of us were at that point in time offshore funds. And I think VC funds usually raise funds in every 3 to 4 year cycle. So you need to give that cycle when somebody's turn to raise funds comes again. For example, our turn came to raise funds. We decided to make it a domicile structure. We were able to access it. And I must say that the entire interaction and the process with SIDBI and the fund of funds was as smooth as any other international LP gets. And we were very, very pleasantly surprised with the forthcoming nature of it. And when we presented our case, I think we had a track record and we had a team in place. We've got access to that capital. And I think you'll see many more funds now changing to this structure. I think all of them will get access to it.
And then the access would come back.